The Aegean sun, a molten coin in the vast blue, beat down upon Aella's back. It was a familiar weight, a constant companion in her life, much like the fine, gritty dust of salt that clung to her skin, her hair, her very breath. 16 years she had lived on Kos, and for as long as she could remember, the rhythm of her days had been dictated by the ebb and flow of the sea, the slow, deliberate evaporation of water, and the painstaking harvest of the white gold that remained. She knelt in the salt pan, her bare feet sinking slightly into the damp crystalline crust. Her hands, already calloused despite her youth, moved with practiced efficiency, raking the salt crystals into neat, conical piles. The air shimmered with heat, and the only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves against the nearby shore, the scraping of her wooden rake, and the distant cries of gulls. Today, though, the familiar rhythm felt off. A restlessness stirred within her, a quiet whisper that spoke of worlds beyond the confines of her small island, beyond the endless cycle of sun, sea, and salt. She paused, straightening her aching back and shielding her eyes with a hand, gazing towards the horizon, where the blue of the sea melted seamlessly into the blue of the sky. What lay beyond that shimmering expanse? What stories did the winds carry from distant lands? Aella, still dreaming? Her father's voice, rough but not unkind, broke through her reverie. Theron, a man sculpted by the sun and sea, stood at the edge of the salt pan, his weathered face etched with the lines of a life spent battling the elements. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. His unwavering dedication to his family, his deep respect for the ancient traditions, and his quiet, enduring strength. "I was just thinking, Father," Ella replied, lowering her gaze. "Thinking is for philosophers in Athens," Theron said, his voice a low rumble. "Here, we work. The gods reward those who toil, not those who daydream." Ella nodded, knowing better than to argue. She knew her father's words held truth. Life on Kos was a constant struggle, a relentless dance between survival and surrender. The sea could be a generous provider, but it could also be a cruel mistress, snatching away livelihoods and lives in an instant. The salt pans were their lifeline, their inheritance, their legacy. And yet, she returned to her raking, the rhythmic scraping of familiar comfort, but her thoughts continued to drift. She imagined bustling marketplaces in faraway cities, filled with exotic goods and strange languages. She pictured sailing ships with billowing sails, carrying brave explorers to unknown shores. She dreamed of a life less ordinary, a life less salty. A warm hand on her shoulder startled her. It was Alara, her grandmother, the family matriarch, her eyes as deep and blue as the Aegean itself, holding a wisdom gleaned from a lifetime of observing the cycles of nature and the foibles of humankind. Ilara carried a small clay pot filled with cool water drawn from the family's well. "Ella, child," Ilara said, her voice soft as the sea breeze. "Come, rest for a moment. The sun is fierce today, and you seem to have more than heat weighing on your shoulders. Share your burden." Ella gratefully accepted the pot, drinking deeply. The water was a welcome relief from the parched dryness of the salt pans. She hesitated, unsure how to articulate the swirling emotions within her. "I saw you looking towards the sea, child," Alara continued, her gaze knowing. "What troubles your heart? I wonder what life is like beyond this island," Ella finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "The traders tell stories of distant lands, of great cities and powerful kings, of women who command ships and lead armies." Ilara smiled, a network of fine lines crinkling around her eyes. "The world is vast, Aella, filled with wonders and horrors alike. But remember, the most important things are often found close to home. The sea, the sun, the salt. These are the foundations of our lives. They are gifts from the gods, and we must treat them with respect." Alara reached down and took a pinch of salt from the pan, rubbing it between her fingers, her touch reverent. "Salt, Aella, is more than just a seasoning. It is life. It preserves our food, allowing us to survive the lean winter months. It heals our wounds, cleansing them of infection. And it connects us to the divine, to the gods who bless us with their bounty." She gestured towards a small, weathered shrine nestled amongst the rocks near the salt pans. It was dedicated to Poseidon, god of the sea, a deity whose favor was crucial for the islanders' survival. In our rituals, we offer salt to the gods, a symbol of our gratitude and our respect. We ask for their protection from storms, for bountiful harvests, for safe passage across the treacherous waters. Ella followed her grandmother to the shrine, her heart filled with a newfound appreciation for the familiar substance. She had always known that salt was important, but Alara's words illuminated its deeper significance, its connection to the spiritual realm. Alara placed the pinch of salt on a small stone altar, chanting softly in an ancient dialect, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the waves. Ella, though she didn't understand all the words, felt a sense of peace and belonging, a connection to something larger than herself. Poseidon, Lord of the Sea, Alara intoned, we thank you for your gifts. We offer you this salt, a symbol of our unwavering devotion. Protect us from harm, guide our fishermen, and bless our island with prosperity. Ella repeated the prayer softly, feeling a sense of responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She was a part of this tradition, a link in the chain that connected her to her ancestors and to the generations yet to come. Just then, a boisterous shout interrupted their solemn moment. Damon, Ella's younger brother, a whirlwind of energy and mischief, came running towards them, his bare feet splashing in the shallow water. Ella, come swim! The water is cool and I saw a crab. Theron's voice, stern but laced with affection, boomed across the salt pans. Damon, back to work. The tide is turning, and we must finish harvesting before the pans flood. Damon made a face, his youthful exuberance momentarily dampened, but he obediently trotted back to his section of the pan. Ella smiled, her heart warmed by her brother's playful spirit. He was a constant reminder of the joy and simplicity of life, a counterpoint to the weighty responsibility she felt. Later that day, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, Ella witnessed the arrival of trading ships. Their sails, billowing in the gentle breeze, were like the wings of giant birds carrying them from distant shores. The village harbor, usually quiet and peaceful, came alive with activity. Merchants from other islands, and even from the mainland, had come seeking coast salt, renowned throughout the Aegean for its purity and fine texture. Ella watched the bartering process unfold, fascinated by the exchange of goods, the haggling over prices, the clash of languages and cultures. I offer you fine wool from Crete, a burly merchant with a booming voice proclaimed, holding up a roll of soft, cream-colored fabric. The finest in the Aegean, for a measure of your coast salt. A villager, a seasoned salt producer, examined the wool carefully, his fingers running over its texture. The wool is fine, but is it worth a full measure? Our salt is prized throughout the islands, known for its ability to preserve meat and fish for months. The negotiation continued, a lively back and forth, a dance of supply and demand. Ella realized that the salt her family harvested wasn't just a commodity, it was a form of power, a currency that gave them leverage in this world. As she observed the scene, her gaze fell upon a particular merchant, a woman named Lyra. Unlike the other traders, who were mostly men, Lyra stood out with her quiet confidence and intelligent eyes. She wasn't shouting or boasting, but she held herself with an air of authority that commanded respect. Ella noticed that Lyra was examining the salt with particular care, not just glancing at it, but truly studying it. She took a pinch between her fingers, rubbing it gently, and then brought it to her nose, inhaling its subtle aroma. Curiosity overcoming her shyness, Aella approached the woman. Is something wrong, merchant? She asked, her voice hesitant. Lyra looked up, her eyes the color of amber, meeting Aella's. A warm smile softened her features. Not at all, she replied, her voice surprisingly gentle. Your salt is excellent, the best I've seen on Kos. You have a skilled hand, young woman. Aella blushed, unused to such direct praise. Thank you, she murmured. I learned from my grandmother. I can tell, Lyra said, her smile widening. I am Lyra from Rhodes. I trade in spices and herbs, things that complement salt, you might say. things that add flavor and zest to life. I am Ella. Lyra tilted her head, studying Aella with an intensity that made her feel both uncomfortable and strangely flattered. I hear Kos salt is prized for its ability to draw out the natural flavors of food to make even the simplest meal a feast. It is true, Ella agreed, a touch of pride creeping into her voice. Our salt is special. Indeed, Lyra said, and I believe it deserves to be paired with the finest spices the world has to offer. I would be honored to trade with your family, Ella, to bring the flavors of the East to your island and to take your exceptional salt back to my people. Over the next few days, a friendship blossomed between Ella and Lyra. The merchant woman, unlike anyone Ella had ever met, was a fountain of stories and knowledge. She spoke of bustling marketplaces in Ephesus, of the towering pyramids of Egypt, of the vast, mysterious deserts of the East. She described cultures where women held positions of power, where they owned businesses, commanded ships, and even led armies. In Ephesus, Lyra said, her eyes sparkling with excitement, women own shops and businesses. They control their own wealth, make their own decisions, and live lives of independence and purpose. They are not confined to the home, to the traditional roles that men dictate. Ella listened, captivated. The world Lyra described was so different from her own, so full of possibilities. It was a world where women were not just wives and mothers, but individuals with their own agency and ambition. The world is changing, Aella, Lyra said, her voice filled with conviction. Women are finding their voices, their power. You have a sharp mind and a strong will. You could do anything you set your mind to. Don't let the confines of this island become the boundaries of your spirit. Lyra's words planted a seed of discontent in Aella's heart. She began to question her place in the world, to wonder if she was destined to spend her entire life raking salt, no matter how vital that task might be. The desire for something more, something different, grew stronger with each passing day. But then disaster struck. A violent storm, one of the worst in living memory, descended upon Kos. The wind howled like a banshee, whipping the sea into a frenzy. The waves, normally gentle and inviting, transformed into monstrous claws, crashing against the shore with devastating force. Ella! Damon! Secure the dikes! Theron shouted, his voice barely audible above the roar of the wind. The storm is upon us! May Poseidon have mercy. Ella, Damon, and Theron raced towards the salt pans, their hearts pounding with fear and desperation. They fought against the raging elements, struggling to reinforce the earthen dikes that separated the salt pans from the encroaching sea. The wind tore at their clothes, the rain stung their faces, and the waves threatened to engulf them. They worked tirelessly for hours, their muscles screaming in protest, their bodies numb with cold and exhaustion. But the storm was relentless, its fury unmatched. Finally, with a sickening crack, a section of the dike gave way, and the sea rushed in, flooding one of the largest salt pans. The salt water contaminated the precious crystals, rendering them useless. Theron stood there, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of despair. The harvest is ruined, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. We will lose much this year. Years of work, washed away in a single night. Ella felt a wave of despair wash over her. The salt pans were their livelihood, their security. Without them, they would face hardship and hunger. The storm had not only destroyed their harvest, it had shattered their hopes for the future. Lyra, witnessing the devastation, did not hesitate. She approached Theron, her expression filled with compassion and determination. I have seen worse, old man, she said, her voice firm, and I have seen how resourceful people can be in the face of adversity. She turned to Aella, her eyes shining with an unwavering spirit. I have traveled far and wide, Aella. I have seen how different cultures deal with challenges. In Egypt, along the Nile, they build dikes that can withstand even the most powerful floods. They use a mixture of mud, straw, and reeds, woven together to create a barrier that is both strong and flexible. Theron looked skeptical. We have always used earth and stone, he said. It is the way of our ancestors. The way of your ancestors is wise, Lyra acknowledged, but there is always room for new knowledge, for new techniques. What have you got to lose? Ella, seeing a glimmer of hope in Lyra's words, stepped forward. Father, let us try it, she pleaded. Lyra has seen these methods work. We must be open to new ideas if we are to survive. Theron, seeing the determination in his daughter's eyes and recognizing the wisdom in Lyra's proposal, reluctantly agreed. For days they worked side by side, Aella, Damon, Theron, and Lyra, rebuilding the dikes using the Egyptian techniques. Lyra patiently guided them, showing them how to mix the mud, straw, and reeds, how to weave them together to create a strong, resilient barrier. It was hard work, even harder than the usual labor of salt harvesting. But as they worked, Ella felt a sense of purpose and camaraderie she had never experienced before. She was learning new skills, working alongside a woman she admired, and fighting for the survival of her family and her community. The experience also deepened her bond with Lyra. She saw not only the merchant woman's intelligence and resourcefulness, but also her compassion and her willingness to help those in need. "Why are you doing this, Lyra?" Ella asked one evening, as they sat by a small fire, sharing a simple meal of bread and olives. "You could have simply sailed away, leaving us to our fate." Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "Because I see something special in you, Ella," she replied. "I see a strength, a resilience, a spirit that refuses to be broken. And because I believe in the power of human connection. We are all interconnected, Aella. What affects one of us affects us all." As the days turned into weeks, the new dikes began to take shape. They were taller, stronger, and more resilient than the old ones. Aella felt a surge of pride and accomplishment as she surveyed their work. They had not only rebuilt their salt pans, they had built something even better. The experience also changed Aella's perspective on her life. She realized that she didn't have to choose between tradition and progress. She could embrace the wisdom of her ancestors while also being open to new ideas and new possibilities. One evening, as they were celebrating the completion of the new dikes, Alara, Aella's grandmother, approached her, her eyes filled with pride. "Ella," she said, "you have grown into a strong and capable woman. You have honored your family, your traditions, and the gods." Alara took a pinch of salt from one of the newly harvested pans and held it out to Aella. "This salt," she said, "is a symbol of your resilience, your determination, and your connection to the sea. It is a reminder that even in the face of adversity, we can find strength and renewal." Ella accepted the salt, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and belonging. She understood now that her life, like the salt itself, was a mixture of the old and the new, the familiar and the unknown. And that was what made it so rich and meaningful. Years passed. Lyra eventually sailed away, continuing her travels and her trade. But she and Aella kept in touch, exchanging letters and occasional visits. Ella never forgot the lessons she had learned from the merchant woman, the lessons about strength, resilience, and the importance of human connection. Ella took over the family's salt business, becoming a shrewd and respected salt weaver. She was known throughout the islands not only for the quality of her salt, but also for her fairness and her willingness to help others. She implemented new techniques to improve salt production, making it more efficient and sustainable. She also became a mentor to other young women, encouraging them to pursue their dreams and to challenge the traditional roles that society had assigned to them. She never forgot the stories Lyra had told her about women in other cultures, women who held positions of power and influence. And while she chose to remain on coast, tending the salt pans that had been in her family for generations, she did so with a newfound sense of agency and purpose. She married a kind and supportive fisherman, and they had children together. She taught her children the importance of hard work, respect for the sea, and the value of salt. She also taught them to be open to new ideas, to embrace change, and to challenge injustice. One day, many years later, a familiar ship sailed into the harbor. It was Lyra, her hair now streaked with silver, but her eyes still sparkling with the same intelligence and spirit. Ella rushed to greet her, her heart filled with joy. They embraced, two friends reunited after years of separation. "Ella," Lyra said, her voice filled with admiration, "you have become everything I knew you could be. You have built a thriving business, you have raised a beautiful family, and you have become a leader in your community." Ella smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "And you, Lyra," she replied, "you have shown me that the world is full of possibilities, that women can be strong and independent, and that we can achieve anything we set our minds to. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of their lives, their triumphs, and their challenges. Lyra told Aella about her continued travels, about the new lands she had discovered, and the new cultures she had encountered. Aella told Lyra about her children, her grandchildren, and the changes that had come to Kos over the years. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the salt pans, Lyra turned to Aella, her expression serious. "Aella," she said, "never forget the power of salt. It is more than just a commodity. It is a symbol of life, of resilience, of connection. It has shaped your destiny, and it has the power to shape the destiny of others." Ella nodded, understanding the depth of Lyra's words. She knew that salt would always be a part of her life, a constant reminder of her heritage, her strength, and her connection to the world around her. Many years later, Ella, now showing the beautiful signs of a life well lived, a life kissed by the sun and seasoned by the salt, continued her work, albeit at a slower pace. The relentless sun, the witness to her journey, still blazed down upon Kos. But she carried on, teaching her children and grandchildren the timeless lessons the salt had instilled in her. The salt, the sustainer, the connector, the silent teacher, continued its enduring legacy. It had woven itself into the very fabric of Ella's being, and through her, it would continue to shape the lives of generations to come. The cycle continued, unbroken, a testament to the enduring power of tradition, resilience, and the simple, profound wisdom found in a grain of salt. Ella's story, a life interwoven with the crystals of salt, reflects timeless truths. What can we learn from the legacy of salt? Salt teaches the value of hard work. The work may be tough, but with determination, you can get through the toughest challenges. Salt teaches tradition. The old ways have wisdom. Ella's grandmother taught her valuable lessons, so we must learn from the past. Salt teaches, above all, connection. Connection to family, to community. This lesson can be seen from Ella working with her community and the kindness shown to her by Lyra. Salt shows interconnectedness between nature and humans. Salt reminds us that even simple things have profound significance. Salt is more than a seasoning, it is part of our world. It shapes, it teaches, it reminds. Just like Aella and the salt, be a force for good in the world.